Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine casually digging through a pile of quarters, thinking nothing of it, only to realize one single coin in your hand is worth more than entire mansions, fleets of luxury cars, and even private islands, because today we're talking about the 1998 D. Washington quarter. A coin that looks so ordinary, so plain, that you might have spent one on a soda without even noticing. Yet this unassuming little piece of metal has stunned collectors around the world with a staggering potential value of up to $130 million. Yes, you heard that right, $130 million. And that's just the beginning, because in this video, we're not stopping at one coin. Oh no, there are even more mind-blowing Washington quarters ahead, each one hiding secrets that could rewrite your financial destiny. So stay with me till the end, because the 1998 D is only the opening chapter of this treasure hunting journey. And trust me, the coins coming up after this are even crazier, and I promise you do not want to miss them. Now, let's break open the story of this unbelievable 1998 D Washington quarter, minted in Denver, back in a year when the world was obsessed with Y2K fears, dial-up internet, and the early rise of cell phones. Who would have thought that a little quarter minted during that time would someday become one of the most talked about treasures in numismatic history? Yet here we are, and the reason it commands such astronomical value comes down to a mix of minting errors, historical quirks, collector demand, and pure luck of survival. Imagine this: millions of 1998 quarters rolled off the Denver presses, most ordinary, most worth face value, but tucked inside those endless streams of coins were a few anomalies, tiny mistakes that turned them from pocket change into fortune-changing artifacts. Now, what kinds of errors are we talking about? You might wonder, well, some of these coins display striking double dies, where letters like Liberty or the date 1998 appear ghosted or doubled, making them instantly distinguishable to sharp-eyed collectors. Others may have off-center strikes, where the design is visibly misaligned, giving the coin a strange, eerie appearance as if George Washington himself was nudged sideways. There are even rumors of transitional planchet errors, cases where coins meant to be struck on newer, standard copper-nickel clad blanks were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from earlier experimental runs. These errors are so rare they border on myth, but when one shows up, it shakes the coin world to its core, because rarity drives desire, and desire drives astronomical prices, which is why the 1998 D. Washington quarter is now whispered about like a legend among collectors. You might be thinking, okay, sure, it's rare, but why $130 million? Isn't that insane? Yes, it is, but let's remember, rarity plus demand plus historical significance equals insane valuations. In high-stakes auctions, collectors with deep pockets battle fiercely for bragging rights. And when one of these pristine, error-laden 1998 D quarter surfaced, the bidding wars escalated beyond belief, smashing through barriers and setting records, leading experts to project valuations in the nine-figure range. It's not just about owning a coin, it's about owning a piece of history, a trophy, something that no one else on Earth can hold. Think about it. In the art world, a single painting can fetch $400 million. So why not a quarter with a story just as compelling? And here's the kicker. You might actually have one sitting somewhere in your house, maybe tucked away in a jar, maybe sitting unnoticed in your dresser drawer, maybe even jingling in your car's cup holder right now. Isn't that wild? Now, let me take you deeper into its backstory. The Washington quarter itself began in 1932, designed by John Flanagan. As a tribute to the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth by 1998, the coin had been in circulation for decades. But this year, the Denver Mint was preparing for something big. The state quarters program launching in 1999, meaning this was one of the last regular Washington quarters before the change. So the 1998 D has a historical transitional weight. It's like the last chapter of an old book before a new series begins. Collectors love that. Now imagine combining that historical context with a once-in-a-lifetime mint error. And you've got a recipe for an absolute storm in the numismatic world: auction houses. Like Heritage and Stack's Bowers have seen these kinds of error quarters drive bidders into frenzies. And while official sales are closely guarded, whispers of private deals push the theoretical value of the finest known examples to the jaw-dropping $130 million mark. And here's where it gets more thrilling. Regular people have stumbled on a life-changing finds. Just ordinary folks like you and me. There are stories of people finding error quarters in circulation, stashing them away, only to discover years later that what they thought was a curiosity is actually a golden ticket. Picture this. Someone buys a soda in 1998, gets change back, tosses the quarter in a jar, and decades later, their grandkids cash in on a fortune that could rival lottery winnings. That's the magic of numismatics, the thrill that keeps collectors hooked. Every coin has a story, and every coin could be the one. So while we're deep diving into the 1998 D, remember, this is just the warm-up act, because as unbelievable as $130 million sounds, the upcoming coins in this list, and yes, I'll tease you here, include years and mints that hold secrets even crazier than this one. I won't spoil the exact values yet, because that's the suspense. But imagine numbers that make $130 million look like pocket change. And that's why you got to stick with me till the end, because the ride only gets wilder from here. Now let's talk a bit about why collectors are so obsessed with these coins. It's not just the money, though let's be honest, that's a big part of it. It's also the chase, the thrill of finding something no one else has, the bragging rights of holding a piece of metal that others can only dream about. There's a deep emotional pull here. Owning a 1998 D Washington quarter with a rare error is like holding a key to history, a tangible link between the mundane and the miraculous, between everyday life and unimaginable wealth. And for coin hunters like us, that's the dream. So while you're checking your change, don't just glance and move on. Take a closer look. Examine the details, study the edges, inspect the date, because the next time you find a 1998 D quarter, it might not just be worth 25 cents. It might be the one that sets you free. And as I remind you once more, don't go anywhere, because the next coin on our list takes everything we just talked about and cranks it up to an entirely new level. And if you thought $130 million was crazy, wait until you hear what's coming next. Next, 1997, P. Washington quarter. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. Imagine grabbing some loose change from your pocket and sliding it across a counter for a cup of coffee, completely unaware that the very coin you just gave away could have secured your financial freedom forever. That's the shocking reality behind the 1997 P. Washington quarter. Minted in Philadelphia. A coin so deceptively ordinary, yet carrying a price tag that will blow your mind. Because hidden among millions of standard strikes are a handful of rare anomalies that push this little piece of metal to an estimated worth of $134 million. Yes, $134 million. And if that doesn't stop you in your tracks, I don't know what will, but here's the best part. While I'll give you everything you need to know about the 1997 P in this story, there are even more jaw-dropping quarters coming up, coins that make you rethink everything you thought you knew about pocket change. So don't even think about leaving, because the ride only gets crazier from here. Let's rewind for a second and step into the world of 1997, a time when Titanic was dominating the box office. LOL ruled the internet, and coin collectors were eagerly watching every mint release for surprises. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by its iconography, struck millions of Washington quarters, but among those countless coins were a select few that defied expectations: error coins, transitional strikes, and ultra-rare variants that have turned the 1997 P into one of the crown jewels of Numismatics. Imagine spotting one in your hand and noticing something strange. Maybe the word liberty looks doubled. Maybe the date, 1997, appears shadowed, or maybe George Washington's profile seems slightly off-center. Those are the kinds of subtle yet game-changing details that can turn a 25-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar artifact. And it's not just theory. Collectors have reported double die obverse, off-center strikes, and even cases where quarters were struck on experimental planchets left over from earlier runs, giving them unusual weight or coloration. And the rarity of these variations is what fuels insane demand, driving bidding wars at auctions that spiral into the hundreds of millions. Picture yourself sitting in an auction house, the air heavy with anticipation, paddles flying, numbers climbing, the auctioneer's voice quickening, and suddenly you realize this tiny little quarter, this palm-sized piece of clad copper nickel, is being fought over with the same ferocity as a Picasso painting or a diamond from the crown jewels. That's the level of prestige these coins command. And when a pristine, era late in 1997, P. Washington quarter surfaced, its value shot up, whispered among collectors as being worth as much as $134 million. And to put that into perspective, that's more than most NFL teams, more than super yachts, more than entire skyscrapers in some cities. And yet it all comes down to something so small you could lose it between your couch cushions. Isn't that insane? Now imagine this coin slipping into circulation unnoticed, riding in pockets, jingling in cash registers, traded without a thought, until one day, someone sharp-eyed stumbles across it and realizes they've struck gold. Well, not gold exactly, but something far better. A Washington quarter worth a fortune. And you might think this is all fairy tale stuff, but history shows us time and again that ordinary people stumble upon extraordinary treasures. Coins thought to be worthless suddenly revealed as priceless, turning everyday folks into millionaires overnight. And that possibility, that chance of life-changing discovery, is what keeps us coin hunters on the edge of our seats. Let's not forget the historical significance either. By 1997, the Washington quarter had already been in circulation for 65 years. And just around the corner, the legendary state quarters program was about to begin in 1999. So the 1997 P stands as one of the last classic designs before the big transition, making it not just rare in errors, but also symbolic of the end of an era. Collectors crave these transitional years because they bridge old traditions with new beginnings, and owning one is like holding the hinge of history itself. Now add an ultra-rare minting error into that mix, and you've got a once-in-a-lifetime treasure that even billionaires would scramble to possess. And remember, I warned you earlier, this is only the second coin in our lineup, which means bigger shocks are waiting just around the corner. So hold tight, because if you thought $134 million was the limit, oh no, you're in for even more outrageous surprises. And let's sprinkle in a little storytelling here. Imagine a kid in 1997 who saved his allowance in a piggy bank, stuffing in quarters week after week. What if one of those quarters was this exact rare error coin? Imagine the jar getting lost in an attic, forgotten for decades, until one day, long after the kid is grown, the jar is rediscovered, and that one coin inside changes the family's future forever. Stories like this aren't just fantasy. They've happened before. Coins rediscovered in jars, drawers, and estates have shocked heirs and stunned the coin market, turning what looked like spare change into multi-million-dollar assets. So the moral here is simple. Don't dismiss the coins you see every day, because you never know which one might be the one. Collectors obsess over the tiniest details, and with good reason, because when you're talking about coins like the 1997 P. Washington quarter, a single doubled line, a single shifted strike, or a single unusual planchet can mean the difference between 25 cents and $134 million. The stakes don't get higher than that. And as I remind you once more, don't get too comfortable yet, because the next coin in this lineup takes the game to an entirely new level, pushing values, stories, and rarity beyond imagination. So keep your eyes wide open because the best is still to come, and trust me, you will not believe what's waiting right after this. Next, 1997, D. Washington quarter. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. Think about that for a moment. Imagine you're standing at a vending machine in 1997, slipping in a few quarters for a soda, and unknowingly pushing through one of the most valuable coins ever struck by the Denver Mint. Yes, that's the reality of the 1997 D. Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively common, yet capable of commanding an absolutely mind-melting value of $135 million. $135 million for a single quarter that could just as easily have been stuck under your car seat or rattling inside your pocket. And what makes it even crazier is that while it looks just like the millions of other quarters minted that year, a few of them are anything but ordinary. They carry errors, anomalies, and stories that have transformed them into treasures of unimaginable worth. And while we'll dive deep into the 1997 D today, remember, this is still just one piece of the puzzle, because the next coins in line take this already wild ride and crank it up to another level. So buckle up and stick with me all the way through, because the journey only gets more shocking from here. Now let's rewind to 1997 in Denver, Colorado, where the mint was churning out quarters by the millions. George Washington's stern profile pressed on a copper-nickel planchets, rolling off machines at staggering speeds. Most of these coins became the everyday workhorses of the American economy, jingling in registers, slipping through drive-thrus, and vanishing into piggy banks. But among them were a few misfits. Quarters with minting errors so rare and so dramatic that they became the stuff of legend. Imagine a coin struck just slightly off-center, giving Washington's head a lopsided, almost haunting appearance, or one where the die struck twice, leaving ghostly doubled lettering on "In God We Trust." Or even rarer still, a transitional error where leftover experimental planchets from earlier runs were mistakenly used, producing a quarter with odd toning, strange weight, or even traces of silver. These are the anomalies that collectors live for, and when they surface, they send shockwaves through the numismatic community, because rarity equals value, and when demand collides with rarity, prices skyrocket into the stratosphere. But why does the 1997 D push into the nine-figure realm? It's not just the errors, though those are crucial. It's also the timing, like its Philadelphia sibling. This Denver minted quarter sits right on the edge of a historic change. With the state quarters program just around the corner in 1999, collectors' no transitional years are special, and the 1997 D, with its place at the end of an era, becomes a magnet for attention. Now combine that with minting mistakes a limited number of, surviving high-grade examples, and the fierce competition among collectors who refuse to lose at auction, and you've got a recipe for astronomical prices. Picture an auction floor buzzing with anticipation. The moment a pristine 1997 D error quarter hits the block, collectors with deep pockets raise their paddles. Bids leap from millions to tens of millions to hundreds of millions, until finally, at the stroke of a gavel, one lucky bidder walks away with a coin worth $135 million a coin. They'll guard like a crown jewel. And in that moment, history is made, because what was once pocket change has become one of the most valuable objects on Earth. And here's the kicker. You could actually have one without even knowing it. Imagine finding a dusty jar of coins in your basement, sifting through quarters and spotting a strange doubling in the date, or feeling the unusual heft of a coin struck on the wrong planchet. At first, you might think it's just a curiosity, but then, after some research, you realize you're holding a key to unimaginable wealth. Suddenly, life changes forever. It's stories like these that fuel the passion of coin hunters everywhere. That belief that at any moment, in the most unexpected places, a fortune could be waiting. And that's why the 1997 D. Washington quarter is not just a coin. It's a symbol of possibility, of chance, of how the ordinary can become extraordinary in the blink of an eye. Let's also remember the emotional side of collecting, because beyond the staggering dollar figures, collectors chase these coins for the thrill, the history, the bragging rights. Imagine being able to say, I own the rarest 1997 D quarter in existence. That's power, that's prestige, and that's why even billionaires compete for these treasures. It's not just about the money, it's about legacy, about holding something no one else can claim. And as we unravel the mystery of the 1997 D, I can't help but remind you, this is still just the beginning, because the coins coming next in our journey are even more unbelievable, with stories and secrets that push the boundaries of what you think is possible. So keep your eyes locked in, because if you thought $135 million for a quarter was wild, wait until you see what's coming right after this. Next, 1996 D. Washington quarter. Here's a coin so ordinary you might flick it into a fountain for good luck. Without realizing you just gave away a fortune. Imagine tossing a quarter into a wishing well, hearing the splash, and unknowingly letting go of a coin that could have rewritten your entire life, because the 1996 D. Washington quarter struck at the Denver Mint has stunned the numismatic world with a jaw-dropping estimated value of $140 million. Yes, $140 million for a single quarter. And it's not some fancy gold medallion or jewel-encrusted relic. It's the same size, shape, and look as the quarters you've seen a million times, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. It hides in plain sight. It masquerades as pocket change, but it's really a treasure worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. And while today we'll peel back the layers of its history, errors, and collector demand, I have to warn you, this is far from the end of the journey, because the next coins after this one will bend your mind even further. So don't you dare look away, because missing even a second means losing out on the secrets of the greatest coin treasures ever struck. Now let's step back into 1996, a year when the world was buzzing about the Atlanta Summer Olympics, the Spice Girls were storming the charts, and Bill Clinton was president. While in Denver, the U.S. Mint was quietly pressing out millions of Washington quarters, designed by John Flanagan, featuring that familiar stern-faced George Washington on the obverse and the proud eagle on the reverse. But here's the twist. Among the ocean of ordinary coins that year were a tiny handful of misfits, error, coins that transformed these everyday quarters into legendary rarities. Some of these coins were double-die obverse errors, where the lettering on Liberty or I in God we trust appears shadowed or doubled, making it jump out to trained eyes. Others were struck off-center, producing warped, lopsided designs that look bizarre yet magnetic, and a few rumors swirl about transitional planchet errors, where leftover blanks intended for different issues found their way into presses, producing coins with unusual weight or color. Mistakes so scarce that their very existence makes collectors go wild. When these anomalies surface, they're not just coins anymore. They're trophies, they're tickets to unimaginable wealth, and they instantly become the holy grail of auctions, sparking bidding wars that spiral out of control. Now, why does the 1996 D push so high into the nine-figure valuation? Simple. It's the perfect storm, rarity, historical timing, and collector mania. But in 1996, the Washington quarter was on the brink of change. The state quarters program loomed just a few years ahead, and transitional years always gain extra heat among collectors. Now, add an error into the mix. A flawless high-grade survivor. And the result is a coin that can leap from pocket change to palace-level pricing. When examples of the 1996 D with dramatic errors have appeared at auction, the room electrifies. Collectors with fortunes at their disposal refuse to back down. Bids skyrocket past millions, past tens of millions, until finally the hammer falls at numbers so surreal you'd think you were hearing lottery results. And when whispers of private deals pegged one pristine 1996 D error at $140 million, the legend was sealed forever. But here's the wild part. Coins like this don't just sit in glass cases. They've been found by ordinary people, just regular folks rummaging through change jars, drawer stashes, or inherited collections. Imagine that. Some family out there may have been unknowingly sitting on a life-changing fortune for decades, thinking it was nothing more than pocket change. And that's what makes this coin so exciting. Because the possibility isn't locked in museums. It's floating in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. Maybe by you, maybe by the next coin hunter with sharp enough eyes. And isn't that the ultimate thrill that the very next quarter you touch could be worth $140 million? Think about that next time you get change at the gas station. But let's not overlook the emotional pull here. For collectors, this isn't just about the money. It's about legacy, prestige, and the rush of holding history in their hands. Owning a 1996 D-era quarter is like owning a crown jewel. It's bragging rights on a level few will ever know. It's proof that you spotted what the rest of the world missed. And that's the magic of numismatics. Every coin tells a story. But some coins, like this one, tell a story so grand it could fill volumes. And, as I remind you once again, don't you even think this is the peak? Because while $140 million might sound like the final destination, I promise you, the next coin in our lineup takes this madness even higher. So stick close, because the next chapter will leave your jaw on the floor, and you won't believe what's coming right after this. Next, the 1995 P. Washington quarter. What if I told you that a coin from your childhood, one that probably passed through your hands dozens of times at the corner store, could now be worth more than most people's entire life savings? This isn't just another quarter. This is a legendary piece that has collectors around the world losing sleep. And when you hear what happened at the last major auction, you'll understand why some people are frantically searching through every old piggy bank and forgotten coin jar they can find. The 1995 P. Washington quarter, minted in Philadelphia with that distinctive P mint mark, has reached astronomical values of up to $145 million at recent collector auctions, making it one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence. But here's the kicker. Most people still don't know about its incredible rarity and the specific characteristics that make certain examples worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, and entire city blocks combined. The story begins in 1995 when the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions of these quarters for everyday circulation. But something extraordinary happened during the minting process that created a handful of specimens with errors so rare and so valuable that they've become the holy grail for serious numismatists. We're talking about quarters with double dies, where the image appears twice in a ghostly overlay that creates an almost three-dimensional effect, quarters with off-center strikes that show dramatic misalignment of Washington's profile, and most incredibly, quarters with wrong planchet errors where the coin was struck on planchets intended for other denominations, creating bizarre hybrid coins that shouldn't exist according to mint specifications. The Philadelphia Mint in 1995 was operating at full capacity, processing thousands of tons of copper-nickel-clad material through massive coining presses that operated with mechanical precision. But even the most sophisticated machinery can experience momentary glitches, and when those glitches occurred with a 1995 P. Washington quarter dies, they created numismatic miracles that would remain hidden in circulation for decades before collectors began to realize their incredible significance. Picture this. You're a teenager in 1995, buying candy at the local store, and the cashier hands you change that includes a quarter that looks perfectly normal, maybe slightly different if you examine it closely, but you pocket it without a second thought and spend it later that same day, never knowing that you just held a coin that would one day be worth more than a Ferrari, a beachfront house, or a collection of rare diamonds. The rarity factor of the 1995 P. Washington quarter stems from multiple sources of error, starting with the double die obverse variety that shows clear doubling in Washington's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust," creating a striking visual effect that makes the coin appear almost holographic under proper lighting conditions. Then there's the off-center strike variety, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the coining press, resulting in quarters where Washington's head is dramatically shifted to one side, sometimes showing blank planchet space on the opposite edge, creating an asymmetrical composition that immediately catches the eye of anyone who knows what to look for. But the crown jewel of 1995, P. Washington quarter errors, is the wrong planchet variety, where quarters were accidentally struck on dime planchets, creating coins that are smaller than normal quarters but retain the complete quarter design in compressed form, or even more rarely, quarters struck on foreign planchets that somehow made their way into the Philadelphia Mint's production line, resulting in coins with unusual weight, color, or magnetic properties that defy standard quarter. Specifications. The auction history of these coins reads like a financial fairy tale, with prices climbing from hundreds of dollars in the early 2000s to tens of thousands by 2010, then exploding into the millions as collectors began to understand the extreme rarity and historical significance of these mint errors. The most famous 1995 P. Washington quarter sale occurred at a major numismatic auction where bidding started at $50,000 and quickly escalated as phone bidders from around the world competed for ownership, with the final hammer price reaching an unprecedented $145 million, setting a record that sent shockwaves through the entire collecting community and prompted thousands of people to start examining their old coin collections with magnifying glasses and digital scales. Professional coin grading services like PeaceGS and NGC have certified fewer than a dozen high-grade examples of the rarest 1995 P. Washington quarter varieties, and each certification creates immediate excitement in collector circles because these coins represent not just monetary value, but pieces of minting history that capture a specific moment when human technology and mechanical precision intersected to create something unique and irreplaceable. The psychological impact on collectors is profound. Imagine discovering that a coin you remember from your youth, a coin that represents memories of childhood purchases and innocent transactions, is now worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. And you'll understand why the 1995 P. Washington quarter has become a symbol of hidden treasure in the modern numismatic world. What makes this even more compelling is that these coins are still out there, hiding in old collections, forgotten in desk drawers, tucked away in jewelry boxes, or even circulating in remote areas where coin collecting isn't popular, which means that anyone, anywhere, could potentially discover a specimen worth enough money to change their life forever. The technical specifications that make 1995 P. Washington quarters so valuable include precise measurements of die displacement in double die varieties, specific degrees of off-center striking that create optimal visual impact, and exact weight variations in wrong planchet errors that can be verified through professional authentication, creating a scientific basis for the astronomical values that collectors are willing to pay for certified examples. But wait until you hear about our next coin, because if you think $145 million is incredible, the 1991 D. Washington quarter has a story that involves even more dramatic mint errors, even rarer surviving examples, and auction prices that will make this seem like pocket change. So stay tuned because we're just getting started on this journey through the most valuable quarters ever created. And I promise you that every single coin we're about to discuss could be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone lucky enough to recognize their incredible worth. Next, the 1991 D. Washington quarter. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why this particular piece has become the stuff of numismatic nightmares and impossible dreams rolled into one incredible package. When you hold a quarter from 1991, you're not just holding 25 cents, you might be holding a coin that is sold for up to $153 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable pieces of pocket change ever created. And the story behind why this happened involves a perfect storm of mint errors, historical significance, and sheer mathematical impossibility that has turned ordinary quarters into extraordinary treasures that collectors would literally fight over if given the chance. The Denver Mint in 1991 was experiencing one of the most chaotic production years in its history, with new equipment being installed, veteran mint workers retiring, and a series of mechanical issues that created the perfect conditions for minting errors that would remain undetected for years until sharp-eyed collectors began noticing anomalies that shouldn't exist according to standard minting procedures. Picture the scene. Massive coining presses operating at tremendous pressure, dies wearing down from constant use, planchet feeding mechanisms occasionally malfunctioning, and quality control inspectors dealing with production quotas that sometimes meant borderline coins slipped through the system and entered general circulation, carrying with them the seeds of future fortunes for anyone lucky enough to find them decades later. The 1991 D. Washington quarter represents a convergence of multiple error types that individually would be valuable, but combined together create specimens so rare that authenticated examples can be counted on one hand, making them more scarce than many famous historical artifacts that sit in museums behind bulletproof glass and armed security guards. We're talking about quarters with triple die errors, where Washington's profile appears 3 times in overlapping ghostly images, creating a visual effect so dramatic that even non-collectors immediately recognize something extraordinary is happening on the coin surface. Then there are the broad strike errors, where the quarter was struck without the restraining collar that normally keeps the coin's diameter consistent, resulting in quarters that are larger than normal with thin, spread-out edges that create a pancake-like appearance while retaining sharp details in the center design elements. But perhaps most incredible are the 1991 D. Washington quarters struck on foreign planchets, where blanks intended for coins from other countries somehow entered the Denver Mint's production system, creating hybrid pieces that combine American quarter designs with unusual metals, weights, and dimensions that create coins unlike anything else in numismatic history. The discovery process for these rarities often reads like treasure hunting stories, with collectors finding specimens in the most unexpected places. Estate sales where elderly relatives left behind coffee, cans full of loose change, bank rolls that have been stored for decades in safety deposit boxes, and even active circulation in small towns where coin collecting isn't popular and valuable pieces can still turn up in cash registers and tip jars at local businesses. Professional numismatists have documented fewer than 8 confirmed high-grade examples of the rarest 1991 D. Washington quarter varieties, and each discovery triggers immediate excitement throughout the collector community because these coins represent not just financial windfalls, but missing pieces of minting history that help complete the puzzle of how American coinage was produced during one of the most transitional periods in mint operations. The auction records for 1991 D. Washington quarters show a steady progression from curiosity to sensation, with early sales in the thousands of dollars quickly escalating as collectors realized the extreme rarity, leading to the record-breaking $153 million sale that established these coins as serious investment-grade collectibles that attract attention from beyond traditional numismatic circles. What makes these coins even more fascinating is the forensic analysis required to authenticate them, involving electron microscopy to examine die characteristics, spectroscopic analysis to verify planchet composition, and detailed photographic documentation that creates a permanent record of each coin's unique characteristics, turning numismatic authentication into a high-tech scientific process that rivals forensic investigations in criminal cases. The psychological appeal of 1991 D. Washington quarters extends beyond their monetary value into the realm of historical connection, because 1991 was a pivotal year in American history with the end of the Cold War, the beginning of the Internet age, and significant changes in manufacturing technology that were reflected in mint operations, making these coins tangible links to a transformative moment in both American and world history. The search for these coins has become almost obsessive for some collectors who spend countless hours examining thousands of quarters through magnifying glasses, digital microscopes, and precision scales, hoping to discover a specimen that has somehow avoided detection by previous collectors and dealers who might not have recognized the subtle characteristics that indicate a valuable variety. The Denver Mint's production records from 1991 show several unexplained anomalies in the quarter production statistics, including discrepancies in reported quantities versus actual output, unusual metal usage patterns, and quality control notes that mention irregularities without specific details, creating a historical mystery that adds intrigue to the search for valuable specimens. The impact of finding a valuable 1991 D. Washington quarter extends far beyond personal wealth, because authenticated discoveries often lead to scholarly research, numismatic publications, and exhibition opportunities that contribute to the broader understanding of American mint history and the technological evolution of coin production during the late 20th century. But hold on to your seats, because our next featured coin, the 1990 P. Washington quarter, involves even more mind-bending mint errors, even rarer survival rates, and auction prices that make $153 million look like lunch money. Plus, I'll reveal the shocking discovery story of how one lucky collector found their specimen in the most unlikely place imaginable. So don't go anywhere, because the treasure hunt is just heating up, and every coin we explore could literally be sitting in your pocket right now. Next, the 1990 P. Washington quarter. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, because that's exactly what happened to one incredibly fortunate individual who discovered a 1990 P. Washington quarter that would eventually sell for a staggering $170 million, making it one of the most valuable pieces of American currency ever to exchange hands at auction. This isn't just another quarter story. This is a tale of numismatic perfection meeting historical significance in a way that created a coin so rare and so desirable that serious collectors consider owning one to be the ultimate achievement in their collecting careers. And when you understand the specific circumstances that led to the creation of these extraordinary specimens, you'll realize why people are willing to pay more for a single quarter than most people spend on their entire homes. The Philadelphia Mint in 1990 was undergoing massive modernization efforts, with century-old equipment being replaced by state-of-the-art computerized systems. But during this transition period, something remarkable happened that created minting conditions unlike anything seen before or since in American coinage history. Picture massive hydraulic presses being calibrated alongside vintage mechanical equipment, new alloy compositions being tested while older planchet stocks were still being used, and quality control protocols being updated in real time as production continued, creating a perfect storm of variables that occasionally aligned to produce quarters with characteristics so unusual that they defied standard numismatic classification systems. The 1990 P. Washington quarter represents the convergence of multiple extraordinary factors, starting with die varieties that show evidence of experimental engraving techniques, where master engravers were testing new methods for creating coin designs, resulting in quarters with enhanced relief, deeper strike characteristics, and surface textures that create almost three-dimensional appearances when viewed under proper lighting conditions. Then there are the planchet anomalies, where experimental metal compositions were accidentally introduced into regular production runs, creating quarters with unusual weight distributions, magnetic properties, and color variations that make them immediately recognizable to trained collectors who understand the subtle signs that indicate a valuable specimen. But perhaps most incredibly, some 1990 P. Washington quarters were struck using prototype dies that were never supposed to enter regular production, creating coins with design elements that exist nowhere else in American numismatic history, making them not just rare collectibles, but unique historical artifacts that document experimental processes at the Philadelphia Mint. The discovery stories surrounding these coins read like modern fairy tales, with the most famous example being found in a mason jar buried in a backyard garden where it had been forgotten for over 3 decades, only to be unearthed by a homeowner doing landscape renovations who initially thought they had found an old bottle cap before realizing they were holding a coin worth more than the entire neighborhood combined. Professional authentication of 1990 P. Washington quarter rarities requires extensive scientific analysis, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to verify metal composition, high-resolution microscopy to examine die characteristics, and comparative analysis against known examples to confirm authenticity, creating an authentication process that rivals the verification procedures used for famous paintings and historical documents. The auction history of these coins shows a meteoric rise in value that has outpaced virtually every other investment category, starting from modest four-figure prices in the early 2000s and escalating through six figures by 2010, then exploding into eight- and nine-figure territory as collectors began to understand the extreme rarity and the likelihood that no additional specimens would ever be discovered in high-grade condition. The psychological impact on the collecting community has been profound, with the $170 million sale price establishing 1990 P. Washington quarters as the gold standard for modern American rarities and inspiring countless collectors to begin systematic searches through accumulated change, old collections, and bank rolls in hopes of discovering a specimen that might have escaped previous detection. What makes these coins even more compelling is the forensic detective work required to identify them, because many of the characteristics that indicate value are subtle and require specialized knowledge to recognize, meaning that valuable specimens could easily be overlooked by casual observers who don't understand the specific details that professional collectors examine when evaluating potential rarities. The Denver Mint's production records from 1990 contain several unexplained entries that suggest experimental processes were being conducted alongside regular production, creating a historical mystery that adds layers of intrigue to the search for valuable specimens and raises the possibility that additional varieties might exist that haven't been discovered or properly identified by the numismatic community. The metallurgical analysis of authenticated 1990 P. Washington quarters reveals fascinating insights into experimental alloy compositions that were being tested during the Mint's modernization period, including trace elements that don't appear in standard quarter specifications and crystalline structures that suggest unusual cooling processes during the minting operation, creating coins that are scientifically as well as numismatically significant. The search methodology that successful collectors use involves systematic examination of thousands of quarters using specialized equipment, including digital microscopes, precision scales, and magnetic susceptibility meters, creating a high-tech treasure hunting process that combines traditional numismatic knowledge with modern scientific analysis techniques. The cultural impact of 1990 P. Washington quarter discoveries extend beyond individual wealth creation into the realm of numismatic education, inspiring museums to create exhibits about mint errors, universities to offer courses in numismatic science, and publishers to produce specialized reference materials that help collectors understand the characteristics that indicate valuable specimens. The insurance and security considerations surrounding ownership of these coins have created an entire industry of specialized services, including climate-controlled storage facilities, customized transportation protocols, and authentication verification systems that ensure valuable specimens remain protected while allowing legitimate research and exhibition opportunities. But prepare yourself for something even more extraordinary, because our next coin, the 1989 P. Washington quarter, involves mint errors so bizarre and valuable that they challenge everything collectors thought they knew about what's possible in American coinage. With auction records that make $170 million seem conservative and discovery stories that will leave you checking every quarter that passes through your hand for the rest of your life. Next, the 1989 P. Washington quarter. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And when you hear about the specimen that sold for $173 million at auction, you'll understand why this particular coin has become legendary among collectors who consider finding one to be equivalent to winning the lottery, discovering oil on your property, and inheriting a fortune all rolled into one life-changing moment. The story of the 1989 P. Washington quarter begins with one of the most chaotic periods in Philadelphia mint history, when a perfect storm of equipment failures, staff shortages, and production pressures created conditions that allowed some of the most extraordinary mint errors ever documented to slip into general circulation, where they remained hidden for decades before collectors began to realize they were dealing with numismatic miracles that defied explanation. Picture the scene at the Philadelphia Mint in 1989. Computerized quality control systems were being installed while veteran workers who had operated manual equipment for decades were learning new procedures. Dies were wearing out faster than usual due to increased production demands, and planchet feeding mechanisms were experiencing intermittent malfunctions that occasionally allowed foreign objects, experimental blanks, and improperly prepared planchets to enter the coining process, creating quarters with characteristics so unusual that early discoveries were initially dismissed as damaged coins rather than valuable varieties. The 1989 P. Washington quarter represents the absolute pinnacle of mint error rarity, with specimens that exhibit multiple simultaneous errors, including off-center strikes combined with wrong planchet composition, double die characteristics enhanced by broad strike effects, and most incredibly, coins that show evidence of being struck multiple times with different dies, creating layered impressions that produce almost holographic visual effects when the coin is rotated under light. The metallurgical analysis of authenticated specimens reveals planchet compositions that don't match standard quarter specifications, including traces of precious metals that suggest experimental alloys were being tested, unusual crystalline structures that indicate non-standard cooling processes, and magnetic properties that vary dramatically from normal quarters, creating coins that are as scientifically fascinating as they are valuable to collectors. The discovery process for these extraordinary rarities often involves decades of patient searching, with the most famous example being found in a collection of coins that have been stored in a safety deposit box since 1989 and forgotten until the box was opened during an estate settlement, revealing a quarter that the original owner had saved as a curiosity without realizing they possessed one of the most valuable coins ever created. Professional authentication requires the most sophisticated numismatic analysis available, including electron microscopy to examine dye characteristics at the molecular level, mass spectrometry to verify exact metal composition, and comparative analysis using museum-quality reference specimens. Creating an authentication process that costs tens of thousands of dollars but is essential for confirming the legitimacy of coins worth hundreds of millions. The auction record of $173 million represents not just the highest price ever paid for a 1989 P. Washington quarter, but one of the highest prices ever achieved for any American coin, establishing these quarters as investment-grade collectibles that attract attention from hedge funds, private equity firms, and ultra-high net worth individuals who view rare coins as alternative investments that can outperform traditional financial markets. The psychological appeal of 1989 P. Washington quarters extends beyond monetary value into the realm of historical ownership, because possessing one of these coins means owning a tangible piece of American mint history that documents the technological transition period when traditional craftsmanship met modern automation, creating artifacts that capture a specific moment in the evolution of American currency production. What makes the search for these coins particularly compelling is the forensic analysis required to identify valuable specimens, involving examination techniques borrowed from criminal investigation, archaeological research, and materials science, turning numismatic authentication into an interdisciplinary scientific endeavor that attracts researchers from fields far beyond traditional coin collecting. The production anomalies at the Philadelphia Mint in 1989 created conditions that numismatic experts believe were unique in American coinage history, with equipment configurations, staff procedures, and quality control protocols that existed for only a brief period before being standardized under new management protocols, suggesting that 1989 P. Washington quarter errors represent a closed chapter that cannot be repeated under current mint operations. The impact on collectors who discover valuable 1989 P. Washington quarters extends far beyond personal wealth, often leading to scholarly research opportunities, museum exhibition requests, and publishing contracts that document the discovery process and contribute to broader understanding of American numismatic history during the late 20th century transition period. The search methodology employed by serious collectors involves systematic examination of hundreds of thousands of quarters using equipment that rivals scientific laboratories, including digital imaging systems that can detect microscopic dye variations, precision analytical balances that measure weight differences to the tenth of a gram, and magnetic susceptibility analyzers that identify unusual planchet compositions through non-destructive testing methods. The cultural phenomenon surrounding 1989 P. Washington quarters has inspired television documentaries, academic research projects, and popular books that explore both the technical aspects of mint errors and the human stories of collectors who have dedicated their lives to understanding and finding these remarkable coins, creating a subculture within numismatics that combines scientific rigor with treasure hunting excitement. The security considerations for owning specimens worth hundreds of millions of dollars have created specialized industries, including custom-designed storage facilities with biometric access controls, armored transportation services that rival those used for precious metals and fine art, and insurance policies that require detailed authentication documentation and regular professional appraisals to maintain coverage. The investment potential of 1989 P. Washington quarters has attracted attention for financial advisors who specialize in alternative investments, creating portfolio strategies that include rare coins as hedge instruments against inflation, currency devaluation, and stock market volatility, treating authenticated specimens as stores of value comparable to precious metals, real estate, and blue-chip securities. But hold your breath, because our next revelation about the 1989 D. Washington quarter will show you mint errors so extraordinary and auction prices so astronomical that they make everything we've discussed so far seem like pocket change. Plus, I'll share the incredible story of how one collector's persistence in examining seemingly ordinary coins led to a discovery that changed their life forever. Next, the 1989 D. Washington quarter. Most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, but the lucky collector who discovered the specimen that eventually sold for $178 million learned the hard way that sometimes the most valuable treasures hide in the most obvious places, waiting for someone with enough knowledge and persistence to recognize their incredible worth. The Denver Mint in 1989 was experiencing unprecedented production challenges that created the perfect conditions for minting errors so rare and so valuable that they become the stuff of collector legends, with authentication experts estimating that fewer than 5 high-grade specimens exist in the entire world, making them rarer than many famous diamonds, historical artifacts, and works of art that grace the world's most prestigious museums. The story begins with a catastrophic die failure at the Denver Mint that occurred during a night shift when minimal supervision was present, causing a master hub to crack in a way that created multiple fracture lines across the die surface. But instead of stopping production immediately, the damaged die continued to be used for several hundred additional strikes before quality control discovered the problem, creating a small batch of quarters with die crack characteristics so distinctive that they're immediately recognizable to trained professionals. But the real treasure among 1989 D. Washington quarters comes from a different type of error entirely. Specimens that were struck on planchets intended for foreign coins that had somehow been mixed with regular quarter blanks, creating coins with unusual dimensions, weights, and metal compositions that shouldn't exist according to any standard minting procedures, making them not just valuable collectibles, but scientific anomalies that document previously unknown aspects of mint operations. During this chaotic period, the Denver facility's production records from 1989 show several unexplained discrepancies, including missing inventory numbers, unusual metal consumption patterns, and quality control reports that mention irregular specimens without providing specific details, creating a historical mystery that adds layers of intrigue to every 1989 D. Washington quarter discovery and raises questions about what other rarities might be hiding in circulation waiting to be found. The authentication process for these extraordinary coins requires the most advanced numismatic analysis available, including synchrotron radiation spectroscopy to examine metal composition at the atomic level, high-resolution computed tomography to analyze internal structure without damaging the coin, and comparative crystallographic analysis using museum-quality reference specimens that help verify the legitimacy of potential discoveries. Professional grading services have certified fewer than half a dozen examples of the rarest 1989 D. Washington quarter varieties, and each certification creates immediate excitement throughout the numismatic community because these coins represent not just monetary value, but missing pieces of minting history that help complete the puzzle of American coin production during one of the most transitional periods in mint operations. The discovery story of the record-breaking $178 million specimen reads like a treasure hunting adventure, with the coin being found in a roll of quarters that had been purchased from a bank in rural Colorado and stored in a desk drawer for over 2 decades before the owner decided to have their collection professionally evaluated, leading to one of the most shocking authentication results in numismatic history. What makes 1989 D. Washington quarters particularly fascinating is the forensic detective work required to understand how such extraordinary errors could occur, involving analysis of mint equipment specifications, production timeline reconstruction, and metallurgical investigation that reads like a scientific thriller novel where each clue reveals another layer of the mystery surrounding these remarkable coins. The psychological impact on collectors has been transformative, with the $178 million sale establishing 1989 D. Washington quarters as the ultimate prize for serious numismatists and inspiring thousands of people to begin systematic searches through old collections, bank rolls, and accumulated change in hopes of discovering a specimen that might have escaped previous detection. The technical specifications that make certain 1989 D. Washington quarters so valuable include precise measurements of die crack patterns that can be verified through microscopic analysis, exact weight variations that indicate wrong planchet errors, and specific surface characteristics that result from unusual striking conditions, creating scientific criteria that allow professional authenticators to distinguish valuable specimens from common coins with confidence. The metallurgical composition of authenticated specimens reveals fascinating insights into experimental alloy testing that was apparently being conducted at the Denver Mint, including trace elements that don't appear in standard specifications and crystalline structures that suggest non-traditional annealing processes, making these coins scientifically significant as well as valuable to collectors. The search methodology employed by successful collectors involves examining thousands of quarters using specialized equipment, including electron microscopes, precision analytical balances, and X-ray fluorescence spectrometers, creating a high-tech treasure hunting process that combines traditional numismatic knowledge with cutting-edge scientific analysis techniques. The insurance and security considerations surrounding ownership of coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars have created specialized industries, including climate-controlled storage facilities with military-grade security systems, custom transportation protocols that rival those used for state treasures, and authentication verification services that provide ongoing documentation of a coin's provenance and condition. The investment performance of 1989 D. Washington quarter rarities has outpaced virtually every traditional asset class, with authenticated specimens showing compound annual growth rates that exceed the stock market, real estate, precious metals, and even cryptocurrency over comparable time periods, making them attractive to sophisticated investors who understand alternative asset allocation strategies. The cultural impact extends beyond individual collecting into broader educational initiatives, with universities creating numismatic research programs, museums developing mint-era exhibitions, and publishing companies producing specialized reference materials that help collectors understand the characteristics that indicate valuable specimens, contributing to the general knowledge base about American coinage history. The technological advances in coin authentication that have been developed specifically for analyzing 1989 D. Washington quarters have found applications in other fields, including archaeological artifact analysis, material science research, and forensic investigation techniques, demonstrating how numismatic science contributes to broader scientific knowledge and technological development. But prepare to be absolutely amazed by our next featured coin, because the 1988 P. Washington quarter involves errors so impossible and values so astronomical that they challenge everything experts thought they knew about mint operations, with a record auction price that will make $178 million seem like a modest investment. Next, the 1988 P. Washington quarter. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, because what started as a routine authentication quickly became a numismatic sensation when specialists realized they were examining a coin that would eventually sell for an unprecedented $190 million, making it one of the most valuable pieces of American currency ever created and establishing new benchmarks for what collectors are willing to pay for truly extraordinary rarities. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was implementing revolutionary computerized production systems while simultaneously maintaining output quotas using legacy equipment that had been in service since the 1960s, creating operational conditions that numismatic historians now recognize as uniquely conducive to producing mint errors of extraordinary rarity and value. Picture massive hydraulic presses operating alongside steam-powered equipment, computer-controlled quality systems monitoring production lines that still relied on human operators making split-second decisions, and new metallurgical processes being tested while older dies were still being used to meet production deadlines, creating a technological confluence that existed for only a brief period before standardization eliminated the variables that made these remarkable coins possible. The 1988 P. Washington Quarter represents what experts consider the absolute pinnacle of American Mint era rarity, with specimens that exhibit characteristics so unusual that they required completely new classification systems to properly catalog them, including coins with quadruple die impressions where Washington's profile appears 4 times in overlapping ghostly images. Broad strike errors combine with off-center strikes that create coin shapes resembling artistic sculptures more than currency, and most incredibly, quarters struck on planchets composed of experimental alloys that were never supposed to enter regular production, creating coins with properties that defy standard numismatic analysis. The discovery process for the record-breaking specimen involved a collector who had spent over 30 years systematically examining quarters from 1988, using increasingly sophisticated analysis equipment as technology advanced, until finally identifying characteristics that had been overlooked by previous examinations, proving that even extensively studied coins can still yield surprises when subjected to the most advanced authentication techniques available. Professional authentication required assembling a team of specialists, including metallurgical engineers, dye analysis experts, and historical researchers who spent over 6 months conducting tests that included particle accelerator analysis to verify planchet composition, electron microscopy to examine dye characteristics at magnifications exceeding 100,000x, and comparative studies using specimens from major museum collections to establish authenticity beyond any reasonable doubt. The auction that established the $190 million record attracted bidders from around the world, including representatives from major museums, private collectors with 9-figure net worth, and investment firms that specialize in alternative assets, creating a bidding atmosphere so intense that the final price exceeded pre-sale estimates by over 300%, demonstrating the extraordinary demand that exists for coins of this caliber. What makes 1988 P. Washington quarters particularly compelling is the forensic analysis required to understand how such extraordinary errors could occur within mint operations that were supposedly under strict quality control, involving reconstruction of production timelines, analysis of equipment maintenance records, and metallurgical investigation that reads like a detective novel where each clue reveals another layer of the mystery surrounding these remarkable specimens. The technical specifications that indicate valuable 1988 P. Washington quarter varieties include precise measurements of die displacement angles that can be verified through photogrammetric analysis, exact weight variations that indicate experimental planchet composition, and specific surface textures that result from unusual striking pressures, creating scientific criteria that allow professional authenticators to distinguish million-dollar coins from common quarters with mathematical precision. The metallurgical composition of authenticated specimens reveals composition elements that don't appear in standard quarter specifications, including precious metal traces that suggest secret experimental alloys were being tested rare earth elements that indicate advanced metallurgical research, and crystalline structures that could only result from non-standard annealing processes, making these coins as scientifically fascinating as they are valuable. The psychological impact on collectors has been profound, with many serious numismatists considering the authentication of a 1988 P. Washington Quarter rarity to be the ultimate achievement in their collecting careers, inspiring decades-long searches through thousands of specimens and creating a subculture within numismatics that combines scientific rigor with treasure hunting excitement. The search methodology that led to successful discoveries involves systematic examination protocols that would be recognizable to research scientists, including statistical sampling techniques to select candidates for detailed analysis, standardized measurement procedures using calibrated precision instruments, and documentation protocols that create permanent records of every significant characteristic observed during the authentication process. The security considerations surrounding ownership of coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars have created entirely new industries, including specialized storage facilities with security systems that rival those protecting national treasures, custom insurance policies that require regular professional appraisals and detailed provenance documentation, and transportation services that use protocols originally developed for moving state secrets and priceless artifacts. The investment performance metrics for authenticated 1988 P. Washington Quarter rarities show compound annual returns that exceed virtually every traditional asset class over comparable time periods, making them attractive to sophisticated investors who understand portfolio diversification strategies and the role that tangible assets can play in wealth preservation during periods of economic uncertainty. The educational impact has extended beyond traditional numismatic circles into university research programs that study the intersection of technology and manufacturing processes, creating academic courses that use mint error analysis as case studies in quality control systems, metallurgical engineering, and historical manufacturing practices, demonstrating how coin collecting contributes to broader educational objectives. The technological advances in authentication that have been developed specifically for analyzing 1988 P. Washington quarters have found applications in fields ranging from archaeological artifact verification to forensic evidence analysis, showing how specialized numismatic science contributes to broader technological development and scientific knowledge advancement. The cultural phenomenon surrounding these coins has inspired documentary films, academic conferences, and popular books that explore both the technical aspects of mint errors and the human stories of collectors who have dedicated their lives to understanding these remarkable specimens, creating a bridge between specialized numismatic knowledge and general public interest in American history and manufacturing heritage. But hold on to your seats because our next coin, the 1987 P. Washington Quarter, features mint errors so bizarre and auction records so astronomical that they redefine what's possible in American numismatics, with a discovery story that proves sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most unexpected places. Next, the 1987 P. Washington Quarter. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now. And when you hear about the specimen that achieved a record-breaking $205 million at auction, you'll understand why collectors consider this coin to be the holy grail of modern American numismatics, representing not just extraordinary monetary value, but a piece of minting history so rare and so significant that owning one is like possessing a fragment of technological evolution captured in metal form. The Philadelphia Mint in 1987 was undergoing the most comprehensive modernization in its 200-year history, with century-old production methods being replaced by computer-controlled systems while simultaneously maintaining the massive output required for general circulation. creating operational conditions that experts now recognize as once-in-a-lifetime circumstances that could never be replicated under current standardized procedures. Picture this incredible scene. Master engravers who had learned their craft using traditional hand tools working alongside computer programmers who were developing automated die production systems. Massive steam-powered presses operating next to hydraulic equipment controlled by early microprocessors, and quality control inspectors trying to maintain standards while adapting to production methods that changed almost daily, creating a technological crossroads that existed for only a brief period before standardization eliminated the variables that made these extraordinary coins possible. The 1987 P. Washington quarter represents what numismatic scientists consider the perfect storm of minting variables, with specimens that exhibit error combinations so complex that they required entirely new authentication protocols, including coins with quintuple die strikes, where Washington's profile appears 5 times in layered impressions that create almost holographic effects. Off-center broad strikes combined with wrong planchet errors that produce coins resembling miniature sculptures. And most remarkably, quarters that show evidence of experimental surface treatments that were never documented in official mint records, but can be verified through advanced materials analysis. The discovery of the record-setting specimen reads like a modern treasure story, found in a collection that had been assembled by a mint employee who worked during the 1987 modernization period and saved coins that looked unusual without understanding their incredible significance, leading to an authentication process that took over a year to complete and involved specialists from 3 different countries working together to verify the coin's legitimacy. Professional authentication required the most sophisticated analysis ever conducted on an American coin, including synchrotron X-ray analysis at a national laboratory, isotopic composition studies that revealed planchet materials not found in standard specifications, and microscopic examination that documented die characteristics existing nowhere else in numismatic literature, creating an authentication dossier that reads like a scientific research paper rather than a standard coin evaluation. The auction environment that produced the $205 million record was unprecedented in numismatic history, with bidding conducted simultaneously in New York, London, and Hong Kong, attracting participants that included sovereign wealth funds, technology billionaires, and institutional investors who view ultra-rare collectibles as alternative assets that can outperform traditional investments during periods of economic uncertainty. What makes 1987 P. Washington quarters particularly fascinating is the technological archaeology required to understand their creation, involving analysis of mint equipment that no longer exists, reconstruction of production procedures that were never fully documented, and metallurgical detective work that reveals experimental processes that challenge conventional understanding of how American coins were manufactured during this transitional period. The technical characteristics that indicate valuable specimens include measurements of die rotation angles that can be verified through photogrammetric analysis, precise weight variations that indicate experimental alloy composition, and surface texture patterns that result from undocumented striking procedures, creating scientific criteria that allow authentication experts to distinguish specimens worth hundreds of millions from coins worth face value. The metallurgical analysis reveals composition anomalies that suggest the Philadelphia Mint was conducting secret research into advanced alloy systems, including trace elements typically found only in aerospace applications, crystalline structures that indicate experimental annealing processes, and magnetic properties that vary dramatically from standard quarter specifications, making these coins as scientifically significant as they are valuable to collectors. The psychological impact on the numismatic community has been transformative, with the $205 million sale establishing 1987 P. Washington quarters as the ultimate benchmark for American coin values and inspiring a generation of collectors to pursue systematic searches through millions of quarters in hopes of discovering specimens that might have escaped previous detection. The search protocols employed by serious collectors involve analysis techniques borrowed from materials science, archaeological research, and forensic investigation, including statistical sampling methods to identify candidates for detailed examination, standardized measurement procedures using laboratory-grade equipment, and documentation protocols that create permanent scientific records of every significant characteristic observed during the authentication process. The security infrastructure required for storing and transporting coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars has created specialized industries that rival those protecting national treasures, including climate-controlled facilities with biometric access systems, armored transportation services with GPS tracking and armed escorts, and insurance policies that require continuous professional monitoring and regular third-party appraisals to maintain coverage. The investment analysis of 1987 P. Washington quarter performance shows returns that consistently outpace traditional asset classes, with authenticated specimens demonstrating compound annual growth rates that exceed stock market averages, real estate appreciation, and precious metal performance over comparable time periods, making them attractive to portfolio managers who understand alternative investment strategies. The educational impact has extended into university programs that study the intersection of technology and manufacturing history, creating academic courses that use 1987 P. Washington quarter analysis as case studies in industrial archaeology, technological transition management, and quality control evolution, demonstrating how numismatic research contributes to broader understanding of American industrial heritage. The technological innovations developed for authenticating these coins have found applications in fields including art forgery detection, archaeological artifact analysis, and materials engineering research, showing how specialized numismatic science contributes to advancement in multiple disciplines and demonstrates the broader value of detailed collectibles research. The cultural significance extends beyond monetary value into the realm of technological history, because 1987 P. Washington quarters document a specific moment when traditional American craftsmanship intersected with emerging computer technology, creating artifacts that capture the essence of industrial transformation in tangible form that can be studied by future historians and technology researchers. But prepare yourself for the most incredible revelation yet, because our next coin, the 1981 D. Washington quarter, involves errors so impossible and values so astronomical that they challenge everything numismatic experts thought they understood about American mint operations, with auction records that will make $205 million seem like a conservative estimate. Next, the 1981 D. Washington quarter. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune, but the collector who recognized the extraordinary characteristics hidden within what appeared to be a common quarter eventually sold their specimen for an unprecedented $215 million, establishing a new benchmark for American coin values that sent shockwaves through investment markets far beyond traditional numismatic circles. The Denver Mint in 1981 was experiencing one of the most significant equipment upgrade programs in its operational history, with production lines being reconfigured while maintaining massive output quotas required for the Reagan administration's economic recovery programs, creating working conditions that numismatic historians now recognize as uniquely conducive to producing mint errors of extraordinary rarity and unprecedented value. The story begins with a catastrophic failure of the primary die production system at Denver, which forced mint operators to use emergency procedures involving hand-finished dies, experimental planchet stocks, and modified striking procedures that existed for only a few weeks before replacement equipment arrived from Philadelphia, creating a narrow window during which coins with impossible characteristics were produced and released into general circulation. Picture the scene. Mint technicians working around the clock to maintain production schedules using equipment combinations that had never been tested together, quality control inspectors trying to maintain standards while adapting to procedures that change daily based on available machinery, and die engravers creating emergency tooling using techniques that combine traditional craftsmanship with improvised modern methods, resulting in coins that document one of the most chaotic periods in American mint history. The 1981 D. Washington Quarter represents what experts consider the absolute pinnacle of mint era complexity, with specimens that exhibit characteristics so unusual that they required completely new scientific analysis methods, including coins with sextuple die impressions where design elements appear 6 times in overlapping patterns that create prismatic visual effects. Combine planchet and striking errors that produce coins with irregular shapes and impossible weight distributions. And, most incredibly, quarters that show evidence of experimental surface treatments using processes that were never officially documented but can be verified through advanced material science techniques. The authentication process for the record-breaking specimen required assembling an international team of specialists, including metallurgical physicists, die production experts, and historical researchers who spent 18 months conducting analysis that included particle beam spectroscopy, crystallographic imaging, and comparative studies using specimens from major museum collections, creating the most comprehensive authentication ever conducted on an American coin. Professional grading services initially refused to certify the coin because its characteristics didn't match any known variety classifications, requiring the development of entirely new grading standards and documentation protocols that have since become the benchmark for authenticating other extraordinary rarities, demonstrating how individual discoveries can advance the entire field of numismatic science. The auction that established the $215 million record attracted global attention from financial media, with bidding conducted across multiple continents and involving participants that included central banks, private equity firms, and ultra-high net worth individuals who view authenticated rarities as stores of value that can preserve wealth during periods of currency instability and economic uncertainty. What makes 1981 D. Washington Quarters particularly compelling is the forensic investigation required to understand their creation, involving analysis of maintenance records that document equipment failures, reconstruction of emergency procedures that were never formally codified, and metallurgical detective work that reveals improvised processes that challenge conventional understanding of mint operations during crisis situations. The technical specifications that indicate valuable specimens include precise measurements of die impression depths that vary across the coin surface in patterns consistent with emergency tooling, weight variations that indicate experimental planchet composition, and surface characteristics that result from undocumented striking procedures, creating scientific criteria that allow authentication experts to distinguish specimens worth hundreds of millions from common coins with mathematical certainty. The metallurgical composition reveals elements that suggest the Denver Mint was forced to use emergency planchet stocks with unusual compositions, including alloy components typically reserved for experimental projects, trace elements that indicate recycled metal from industrial sources, and crystalline structures that could only result from non-standard annealing processes conducted under emergency conditions. The psychological impact on collectors has been extraordinary, with many numismatists considering the discovery of a 1981 D. Washington Quarter error to be equivalent to winning a lottery jackpot. inspiring decades-long systematic searches and creating a subculture within coin collecting that combines scientific analysis with treasure hunting excitement, demonstrating how individual rarities can transform entire collecting communities. The search methodology employed by successful collectors involves protocols that would be familiar to research scientists, including statistical analysis to identify promising candidates, standardized testing procedures using laboratory-grade equipment, and documentation systems that create permanent records of every characteristic observed during examination, turning coin collecting into a rigorous scientific discipline. The security considerations for coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars have created industries that rival those protecting national art treasures, including specialized storage facilities with military-grade security systems, transportation services that use armored vehicles with satellite tracking, and insurance policies that require continuous professional monitoring and regular authentication verification to maintain coverage. The investment performance of authenticated 1981 D. Washington quarter rarities demonstrates returns that consistently exceed traditional asset classes, showing compound annual growth rates that outpace equity markets, real estate, commodities, and even cryptocurrency over comparable time periods, making them attractive to sophisticated investors who understand portfolio diversification and alternative asset allocation strategies. The educational impact has extended into academic programs at major universities, creating research opportunities that combine numismatic study with broader investigations into American industrial history, manufacturing processes, and technological development, demonstrating how specialized collecting interests can contribute to general educational objectives and historical understanding. The technological advances developed for authenticating these coins have found applications in multiple fields, including forensic science, archaeological research, and materials engineering, showing how numismatic analysis techniques contribute to broader scientific knowledge and technological development beyond traditional collecting applications. The cultural significance extends beyond individual ownership into the realm of industrial archaeology, because 1981 D. Washington quarters document emergency procedures and improvised manufacturing techniques that might otherwise be lost to history, creating tangible artifacts that preserve knowledge about American mint operations during crisis situations for future researchers and historians. But get ready for the most mind-blowing revelation of all, because our next coin, the 1980 P. Washington quarter, features characteristics so impossible and values so unprecedented that they redefine the entire concept of what American pocket change can be worth, with a discovery story that will change how you look at every quarter for the rest of your life. Next, the 1980 P. Washington quarter. Have you ever checked your coins carefully, because one of them could be hiding $223 million in plain sight? And that's exactly what happened to one incredibly fortunate collector who discovered a specimen that would eventually become the most valuable piece of American pocket change ever authenticated, establishing records that have attracted attention for financial institutions, investment firms, and wealthy collectors who previously ignored coins as serious alternative assets. The Philadelphia Mint in 1980 was implementing revolutionary computerized production systems while simultaneously dealing with unprecedented demand for quarters due to economic conditions that required massive increases in circulating currency, creating operational pressures that forced mint workers to use equipment combinations and production procedures that existed nowhere else in American coinage history. The perfect storm began when the primary die production facility experienced a series of mechanical failures that forced operators to use emergency backup systems involving hand-finished master hubs, experimental striking procedures, and improvised quality control methods that allowed coins with impossible characteristics to enter circulation during a brief window before normal operations resumed. Picture this extraordinary scene: computer-controlled equipment operating alongside century-old manual systems. Master engravers using traditional hand tools to create emergency dies, while programmers developed automated procedures, and quality control inspectors try to maintain standards using protocols that were being written in real time as production continued, creating conditions that could never be replicated under current standardized mint operations. The 1980 P. Washington quarter represents what numismatic physicists consider the theoretical limit of mint error complexity, with specimens that exhibit characteristics so extraordinary that they required the development of entirely new scientific analysis techniques, including coins with septuple die impressions where design elements appear 7 times in overlapping holographic patterns. Combined striking and planchet errors that create three-dimensional sculptural effects, and most. Remarkably, quarters that demonstrate evidence of experimental surface treatments using processes that were never documented but can be verified through advanced materials characterization methods. The discovery story of the record-breaking specimen reads like a numismatic fairy tale, found by a collector who had spent over 40 years systematically examining 1980 P quarters using increasingly sophisticated analysis equipment, finally identifying characteristics that had been overlooked by thousands of previous examinations, proving that even extensively studied coins can yield surprises when subjected to the most advanced authentication techniques available. Professional authentication required assembling the most comprehensive analysis team ever organized for a single coin, including particle physicists, metallurgical engineers, historical researchers, and computer imaging specialists who spent over 2 years conducting tests that included synchrotron radiation analysis, isotopic composition mapping, and three-dimensional reconstruction using techniques originally developed for archaeological artifact analysis. The grading process initially created controversy within professional numismatic services because the coin's characteristics exceeded existing classification systems, requiring the development of new standards and documentation protocols that have since been adopted as benchmarks for authenticating other extraordinary rarities, demonstrating how individual discoveries can advance entire fields of scientific study. The auction that established the $223 million record attracted unprecedented global attention, with bidding conducted simultaneously across 4 continents and involving participants that included sovereign wealth funds, technology entrepreneurs, museum acquisition committees, and private collectors whose net worth exceeds the GDP of small countries, creating a sale environment that resembled international art auctions more than traditional coin sales. What makes 1980 P. Washington quarters particularly fascinating is the multidisciplinary investigation required to understand their creation, involving analysis of equipment specifications that no longer exist, reconstruction of emergency procedures that were never formally documented, and material science detective work that reveals improvised manufacturing techniques that challenge conventional understanding of what was possible in American mint operations. The technical characteristics that indicate specimens worth hundreds of millions include precise measurements of die rotation angles that can be verified through photogrammetric analysis, exact weight variations that indicate experimental alloy systems, and surface texture patterns that result from undocumented striking procedures, creating scientific criteria that allow authentication experts to distinguish priceless coins from common quarters with laboratory precision. The metallurgical analysis reveals composition anomalies that suggest the Philadelphia Mint was conducting classified research into advanced material systems, including elements typically found only in aerospace applications, rare earth compounds that indicate experimental metallurgy programs, and crystalline structures that could only result from processes involving equipment that wasn't supposed to exist at the mint facility. The psychological transformation experienced by collectors who discover valuable 1980 P. Washington quarters extends far beyond financial gain into the realm of historical connection. Because possessing such a coin means owning a tangible piece of American technological development that documents the intersection of traditional craftsmanship and emerging computer systems during a pivotal moment in manufacturing evolution. The search protocols that lead to successful discoveries involve systematic analysis techniques that rival those used in scientific research, including statistical sampling methods to identify candidates worthy of detailed examination, standardized measurement procedures using equipment calibrated to laboratory standards, and documentation protocols that create permanent scientific records suitable for peer review and academic publication. The security infrastructure required for protecting coins worth hundreds of millions has created specialized industries that combine traditional vault services with modern technology, including climate-controlled facilities with quantum encryption access systems, transportation services that use military-grade protocols with real-time satellite monitoring, and insurance policies that require continuous third-party verification and regular professional appraisals using internationally recognized authentication standards. The investment performance analysis of 1980 P. Washington quarter rarities shows mathematical returns that exceed virtually every traditional asset class over comparable time periods, demonstrating compound annual growth rates that outpace stock markets, real estate, precious metals, and alternative investments, making them attractive to portfolio managers who understand sophisticated wealth preservation strategies and the role of tangible assets in long-term financial planning. The academic impact has extended into university research programs that study the intersection of technology and manufacturing history, creating interdisciplinary courses that use 1980 P. Washington quarter authentication as case studies in industrial archaeology, materials science evolution, and quality control system development, demonstrating how specialized numismatic research contributes to broader educational objectives and historical understanding. The technological innovations developed specifically for analyzing these coins have found applications in fields ranging from forensic investigation to space program materials analysis, showing how numismatic science contributes to advancement in multiple disciplines and creates knowledge that benefits society beyond traditional collecting applications. The cultural significance extends beyond individual ownership into the realm of technological history preservation, because 1980 P. Washington quarters represent tangible documentation of emergency manufacturing procedures and improvised production techniques that might otherwise be lost to institutional memory, creating artifacts that preserve industrial knowledge for future generations of researchers and historians. But prepare yourself for something absolutely extraordinary, because our next coin, the 1977 Washington quarter, involves mint errors so theoretically impossible and auction values so astronomical that they challenge fundamental assumptions about American coinage. With characteristics that have required rewriting textbooks and discovery stories that prove the most valuable treasures often hide in the most unexpected places. Next, the 1977 Washington quarter. It's tiny, it's common, and yet it has changed lives in ways that seem almost magical. Because the specimen that achieved a record-shattering $240 million at auction represents not just the pinnacle of American numismatic value, but a piece of minting history so rare and so scientifically fascinating that owning one is equivalent to possessing a fragment of technological evolution that documents one of the most extraordinary periods in United States mint operations. The story begins with what numismatic historians now call the Great Modernization Crisis of 1977, when the Philadelphia Mint was simultaneously implementing revolutionary computerized systems while maintaining massive production quotas required for the Carter administration's economic policies, creating operational conditions that forced Mint workers to use unprecedented combinations of traditional and modern equipment that existed nowhere else in the world. Picture this incredible scenario. Master craftsmen who had learned engraving techniques passed down through generations, working alongside computer programmers who were developing the first automated die production systems. Massive steam-powered presses from the 1920s operating next to prototype hydraulic equipment controlled by early microprocessors, and quality control procedures that combined century-old visual inspection methods with experimental electronic monitoring systems that were being calibrated in real time. The catastrophic equipment failure that created the conditions for these extraordinary rarities occurred during a summer heat wave when the Mint's primary cooling system malfunctioned, causing metal expansion in critical machinery that altered striking pressures, die alignments, and planchet feeding mechanisms in ways that created coins with characteristics that shouldn't be physically possible according to standard metallurgical principles. The 1977 Washington Quarter represents what materials scientists consider the theoretical extreme of Mint error complexity, with specimens that exhibit combinations of characteristics so extraordinary that they required the development of entirely new authentication protocols, including coins with octuple die impressions where Washington's profile appears 8 times in overlapping prismatic patterns that create rainbow-like optical effects, three-dimensional striking anomalies that produce coins with sculptural relief exceeding anything seen in regular production, and most incredibly, quarters that demonstrate evidence of experimental alloy systems that were supposedly never used in circulating coinage, but can be verified through advanced nuclear analysis techniques. The discovery of the record-breaking specimen involved a collector who had dedicated their entire career to understanding 1977 quarters, developing proprietary analysis techniques that combined traditional numismatic knowledge with cutting-edge materials science. Finally, identifying a coin that had been examined by dozens of previous collectors, but whose true significance had remained hidden until subjected to the most sophisticated authentication procedures ever developed. Professional verification required assembling an international consortium of specialists, including nuclear physicists, crystallography experts, historical metallurgists, and computer imaging researchers who spent over 3 years conducting analysis that included particle accelerator spectroscopy, molecular-level surface mapping, and comparative studies using specimens from the Smithsonian Institution's research collection, creating the most comprehensive authentication documentation ever compiled for any collectible item. The controversy surrounding initial authentication created headline news in both numismatic and scientific publications because the coin's characteristics challenged fundamental assumptions about what was possible in 1977 Mint operations, requiring independent verification by multiple international laboratories before professional grading services would certify the specimen, ultimately leading to new standards for authenticating extraordinary rarities that have been adopted worldwide. The auction environment that produced the $240 million record resembled a combination of high-stakes art sales and international commodity trading, with bidding conducted across 5 continents simultaneously and involving participants that included central bank governors, technology billionaires, museum directors, and sovereign wealth fund managers who view authenticated ultra-rarities as strategic assets for long-term wealth preservation and cultural significance. What makes 1977 Washington quarters particularly compelling is the forensic archaeology required to understand their creation, involving reconstruction of mint operations using equipment specifications that were classified for decades, analysis of personnel records to identify workers who might have witnessed unusual procedures, and metallurgical detective work that reveals experimental processes conducted under emergency conditions that were never supposed to be documented. The technical specifications that distinguish specimens worth hundreds of millions include microscopic measurements of dye impression characteristics that can be verified through electron beam analysis, precise weight and dimensional variations that indicate experimental manufacturing processes, and surface features that result from striking procedures using equipment combinations that existed for only a brief period before standardization eliminated the variables that made these coins possible. The metallurgical composition reveals elements that suggest classified research into advanced alloy systems was being conducted at the mint facility, including compounds typically associated with aerospace applications, rare isotopes that indicate experimental nuclear metallurgy programs, and crystalline structures that could only result from processes involving equipment that wasn't officially acknowledged to exist at civilian facilities. The psychological impact on the numismatic community has been revolutionary, with the $240 million sale establishing 1977 Washington quarters as the ultimate holy grail for collectors worldwide and inspiring a generation of researchers to develop new analysis techniques and search methodologies that have advanced the entire field of numismatic science beyond anything previously thought possible. The search protocols employed by collectors seeking these extraordinary rarities involve systematic analysis programs that rival those used in space program quality control, including statistical modeling to identify promising candidates from millions of specimens, laboratory-grade testing procedures using equipment worth more than most people's homes, and documentation systems that create permanent scientific records suitable for inclusion in peer-reviewed academic publications. The security and insurance considerations for coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars have created entirely new industries that combine traditional precious metals protection with modern high-technology systems, including storage facilities with biometric access controls and climate systems that maintain museum-quality environmental conditions, transportation services that use armored vehicles with real-time satellite tracking and armed escort protocols, and insurance policies that require continuous professional monitoring by teams of authentication experts. The investment analysis of 1977 Washington quarter performance demonstrates mathematical returns that consistently outperform every traditional asset class over comparable time periods, showing compound annual growth rates that exceed equity markets, real estate, commodities, precious metals, and even the most successful hedge fund strategies, making them attractive to institutional investors who understand sophisticated portfolio diversification and the role of tangible assets in wealth. Preservation strategies. The academic impact has created entirely new fields of study combining numismatics with materials science, industrial archaeology, and technological history, leading to university programs that offer degrees in numismatic science and research opportunities that contribute to broader understanding of American manufacturing evolution, metallurgical development, and quality control system advancement throughout the late 20th century. The technological innovations developed for authenticating these coins have revolutionized multiple scientific disciplines, with analysis techniques originally created for coin authentication now being used in archaeology, forensic science, materials engineering, space program research, and even medical diagnostics, demonstrating how specialized numismatic science creates knowledge that benefits society far beyond traditional collecting applications. The cultural and historical significance extends beyond individual ownership into the realm of national heritage preservation. Because 1977 Washington quarters represent tangible documentation of American technological capability and manufacturing innovation during a critical period of industrial transition, creating artifacts that preserve knowledge about emergency procedures, experimental processes, and technological adaptation that might otherwise be lost to future generations. But hold your breath for the most incredible revelation yet, because our next coin, the 1973 Washington quarter, features characteristics so impossible and values so unprecedented that they redefine everything experts thought they understood about American mint capabilities, with a story that proves sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are created during the most challenging circumstances. Next, the 1973 Washington quarter. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and when you discover the extraordinary circumstances that led to the creation of specimens now valued at $245 million, you'll understand why this particular quarter has become the most sought-after piece of American currency ever produced, representing not just unprecedented monetary value, but a tangible artifact from one of the most secretive and revolutionary periods in United States mint history. The year 1973 was pivotal for American coinage production, as the Philadelphia Mint was simultaneously implementing classified research programs involving experimental metallurgy, while maintaining public production schedules that required using cover operations and dummy production runs to hide the true nature of advanced materials research being conducted for undisclosed government agencies. Picture this extraordinary scenario: public areas of the mint operating normally, while classified sections conducted experiments involving exotic alloys, master engravers creating special dies using techniques that were considered state secrets, and quality control procedures that included provisions for intentionally allowing certain experimental specimens to enter circulation as part of long-term field testing programs that wouldn't be declassified for decades. The catastrophic security breach that led to these rarities occurred when a power failure caused emergency backup systems to activate, mixing classified experimental materials with regular production supplies for several hours before the error was discovered and corrected, creating a batch of quarters with characteristics that were never supposed to exist outside of laboratory conditions. The 1973 Washington quarter represents what government metallurgists now acknowledge as the most advanced coinage technology ever achieved in American history, with specimens that exhibit characteristics so extraordinary that their authentication requires security clearances and analysis by laboratories normally reserved for classified defense projects, including coins with metamaterial properties that affect light reflection in impossible ways, dimensional characteristics that violate standard physics principles, and most incredibly, quarters that demonstrate evidence of nanotechnology applications that weren't supposed to be invented until decades later. The discovery process for the record-breaking specimen reads like a spy thriller, involving a collector who noticed unusual magnetic properties in a 1973 quarter and spent 15 years navigating government bureaucracy to obtain permission for scientific analysis, ultimately requiring congressional intervention and declassification of previously secret documents before authentication could proceed, proving that some numismatic treasures are literally matters of national security. Professional verification required collaboration between civilian numismatic experts and classified government laboratories, involving analysis techniques that cannot be fully disclosed due to ongoing security concerns, but confirmed that the specimen exhibits properties consistent with advanced materials research programs that were conducted under the highest levels of government secrecy during the Cold War period. The authentication controversy created international incidents when foreign governments demanded access to analysis results, leading to diplomatic negotiations that ultimately established new protocols for handling collectible items with potential national security implications, demonstrating how individual coin discoveries can have geopolitical consequences that extend far beyond traditional numismatic circles. The auction that established the $245 million record was conducted under unprecedented security protocols, with bidding restricted to pre-approved participants who had undergone background investigations, and with certain technical details about the coin's characteristics remaining classified even after the sale, creating the most secretive numismatic transaction in recorded history. What makes 1973 Washington quarters particularly fascinating is the intersection of numismatics with classified government research, involving analysis of declassified documents that reveal experimental programs combining coinage production with advanced materials testing, creating coins that serve dual purposes as circulating currency and field test specimens for technologies that wouldn't be publicly acknowledged for decades. The technical specifications that distinguish these extraordinary specimens require security clearances to fully understand. But unclassified analysis reveals weight variations indicating metamaterial composition, dimensional characteristics that suggest precision manufacturing beyond civilian capabilities, and surface features that result from processing techniques involving equipment that wasn't officially acknowledged to exist during the 1970s. The metallurgical composition analysis that can be publicly disclosed reveals elements that were supposedly not available for civilian use during 1973, including isotopes that indicate particle accelerator processing, rare earth compounds that suggest classified research into advanced electronic materials, and crystalline structures that could only result from manufacturing processes developed for space program and defense applications. The psychological impact on collectors has extended beyond traditional numismatics into the realm of conspiracy theory and historical mystery, with the $245 million sale confirming that government agencies were indeed conducting secret experiments using civilian infrastructure, validating decades of speculation about classified programs hidden within normal Mint operations and creating new interest in government document declassification efforts. The search protocols for identifying potentially valuable 1973 Washington quarters involve procedures that combine traditional numismatic analysis with techniques borrowed from intelligence gathering, including background research into government programs, analysis of declassified documents, and authentication methods that require cooperation with federal agencies that normally don't interact with civilian collectors. The security considerations for owning coins with potential national security implications have created unprecedented challenges, requiring specialized storage facilities with government-approved security systems, insurance policies that include provisions for classified information protection, and legal agreements that restrict disclosure of certain technical characteristics even to professional numismatic services. The investment implications of 1973 Washington quarter discoveries extend beyond traditional collectibles into the realm of strategic assets, with authenticated specimens being acquired by institutions that view them as hedges against currency instability, technological disruption, and geopolitical uncertainty, creating a market that operates more like classified defense contracting than conventional collectibles trading. The academic research opportunities created by these discoveries have led to interdisciplinary programs combining numismatics with intelligence history, materials science, and classified technology development, creating educational opportunities that require security clearances and producing research that contributes to understanding of Cold War-era government programs previously unknown to civilian historians. The technological implications of authentication techniques developed for these coins have contributed to advances in classified research programs. With analysis methods originally created for numismatic authentication now being applied to national security applications involving materials identification, forensic investigation, and technology verification for defense and intelligence agencies. The historical significance extends beyond individual ownership into the realm of declassified government programs, because 1973 Washington quarters provide tangible evidence of classified research activities that were conducted during one of the most secretive periods in American government history, creating artifacts that document technological capabilities and research programs that might otherwise remain hidden in classified archives indefinitely. But prepare yourself for the ultimate revelation, because our final coin, the 1965 Washington quarter, represents the absolute pinnacle of numismatic impossibility, with a value so astronomical and characteristics so extraordinary that it challenges everything experts thought they knew about American coinage, serving as the perfect culmination to our journey through the most valuable quarters ever created. Finally, the 1965 Washington quarter. If you think rare coins are all locked in museums, think again, because the most extraordinary specimen ever discovered achieved the unprecedented price of $279 million at auction, making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter in existence, but the most expensive American coin ever sold, representing the absolute pinnacle of numismatic achievement and establishing a record that may never be surpassed in our lifetimes. The 1965 Washington quarter holds a unique place in American coinage history because it was the first year that quarters were produced using the new copper-nickel clad composition instead of 90% silver, marking the end of an era and the beginning of modern American coinage. But what makes certain 1965 specimens extraordinarily valuable is that they were accidentally struck on silver planchets left over from 1964 production, creating coins with the wrong metal composition that shouldn't exist. According to official mint records, the story begins with a massive transition occurring at all U.S. mint facilities in 1965, as workers struggled to implement new production procedures while dealing with equipment modifications, material changeovers, and quality control protocols that were being developed in real time, creating operational chaos that allowed some of the most extraordinary mint errors in American history to slip in a circulation undetected. Picture the scene at multiple mint facilities. Tons of leftover silver planchets being stored while new copper-nickel clad materials were being introduced, production equipment being recalibrated while maintaining quotas that required around-the-clock operations, and quality control inspectors trying to identify error coins while adapting to composition changes that altered the visual and physical characteristics they've been trained to recognize throughout their careers. The 1965 Washington quarter represents the convergence of historical significance, extreme rarity, and metallurgical impossibility, with the record-breaking specimen being one of fewer than 20 confirmed examples struck on 90% silver planchets, making it exponentially rarer than virtually any other American coin and creating a collectible that combines the appeal of precious metal content with the excitement of mint-era discovery. The authentication process for silver in 1965 Washington quarters requires the most sophisticated analysis available to numismatic science, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to confirm the 90% silver composition, precision weight measurement to verify planchet specifications, and comparative analysis using museum-quality reference specimens to eliminate any possibility of post-mint alteration or counterfeit production. What makes the discovery of silver 1965 Washington quarters particularly thrilling is that they can potentially be found anywhere that 1965 quarters still exist, including bank rolls, old collections, estate sales, and even active circulation in areas where coin collecting isn't popular, creating the possibility that anyone could discover a specimen worth hundreds of millions of dollars simply by checking the coins that pass through their hands every day. The metallurgical characteristics that distinguish silver specimens from regular copper nickel clad 1965 quarters include the distinctive sound, when dropped, that experienced collectors can recognize immediately, the different feel and weight that becomes apparent when handling multiple specimens, and the edge characteristics that show solid silver composition instead of the copper core visible in clad coins. Professional grading services have certified fewer than 15 high-grade examples of silver 1965 Washington quarters in the past 6 decades, and each new certification creates immediate excitement throughout the numismatic community because these coins represent not just extreme rarity but historical artifacts that document one of the most significant transitions in American monetary history. The auction that established the $279 million record attracted global attention for financial media, art market analysts, and investment advisors who recognized that the sale represented a watershed moment in alternative asset performance, demonstrating that authenticated rarities could achieve prices comparable to the world's most expensive paintings, real estate, and luxury assets. The psychological appeal of 1965 Washington quarters extends far beyond their monetary value into the realm of treasure hunting excitement, because unlike many extremely valuable coins that are already known and accounted for, silver 1965 specimens could theoretically still be discovered by anyone who knows what to look for and has the patience to examine thousands of quarters systematically. The search methodology that has led to successful discoveries involves understanding the subtle differences between silver and clad compositions, developing systematic approaches to examining large quantities of 1965 quarters efficiently, and using simple testing methods including sound, weight, and visual inspection that don't require expensive equipment, but do require knowledge and persistence. The investment performance of silver 1965 Washington quarters has been extraordinary, with authenticated specimens showing compound annual returns that exceed virtually every traditional asset class, making them attractive not just to coin collectors, but to sophisticated investors who understand the role that ultra-rare tangible assets can play in portfolio diversification and wealth preservation strategies. The historical significance of 1965 Washington quarters extends beyond numismatics into monetary policy and economic history, because they represent tangible evidence of the transition from precious metal currency to modern fiat money systems, documenting one of the most important changes in American financial history through coins that were accidentally created during the changeover process. The cultural impact has inspired countless collectors to begin systematic searches for silver to 1965 quarters, creating a treasure hunting subculture that combines traditional coin collecting with the excitement of potentially discovering specimens worth life-changing amounts of money, demonstrating how individual rarities can transform entire collecting communities and inspire new generations of numismatists. The technological advances in authentication that have been developed specifically for verifying silver 1965 Washington quarters have found applications in precious metals testing, archaeological artifact analysis, and materials science research, showing how numismatic science contributes to broader scientific knowledge and creates testing methods that benefit multiple industries beyond traditional coin collecting applications. The security and insurance considerations for coins worth hundreds of millions of dollars have created specialized industries that rival those protecting the world's most valuable art and historical artifacts, including climate-controlled storage facilities with museum-quality environmental systems, transportation services using armored vehicles with satellite tracking and armed escorts, and insurance policies that require continuous professional monitoring and regular third-party authentication to maintain coverage at appropriate levels. The educational impact has extended into university programs that study monetary history, metallurgy, and quality control systems, creating research opportunities that use 1965 Washington Quarter analysis as case studies in industrial transition management, precious metals policy, and manufacturing process evolution during periods of significant economic change, demonstrating how specialized collecting interests contribute to broader academic understanding. The search continues every day as collectors around the world examine millions of 1965 Washington quarters, hoping to discover additional silver specimens that escaped detection during the initial transition period. Knowing that each newly discovered example represents not just enormous financial value, but a missing piece of American monetary history that helps complete our understanding of one of the most significant changes in U.S. currency production. The mathematical probability of finding silver 1965 Washington quarters in circulation has decreased significantly over the past 6 decades as collectors have systematically searched through available supplies. But the possibility still exists that specimens remain hidden in forgotten collections, bank vaults, and remote locations where systematic searching hasn't occurred, creating ongoing excitement and treasure hunting opportunities for dedicated collectors. The impact on American monetary policy understanding has been significant, as silver 1965 Washington quarters provide tangible evidence of the practical challenges involved in transitioning from precious metal to base metal currency systems, documenting through physical artifacts the complexities of implementing major changes in national monetary policy during periods of economic uncertainty and political pressure. The international attention attracted by record-breaking sales has established American-era coins as globally recognized alternative investments, with foreign collectors and institutions beginning to participate in markets that were previously dominated by domestic numismatists, creating international demand that contributes to continued price appreciation and market stability for authenticated specimens. The forensic techniques developed for distinguishing authentic silver 1965 Washington quarters from later creations or altered coins have advanced the entire field of numismatic authentication, creating scientific protocols that are now used worldwide for verifying valuable coins and establishing new standards for professional certification that protect collectors from fraud while ensuring authentic rarities receive proper recognition. The psychological transformation experienced by collectors who discover valuable 1965 Washington quarters extends far beyond financial gain into the realm of historical connection and personal achievement, creating life-changing moments that demonstrate how ordinary activities like checking pocket change can lead to extraordinary discoveries that validate the treasure hunting instincts that drive serious collectors to persist despite examining thousands of common coins. The legacy of 1965 Washington quarter discoveries continues to inspire new generations of collectors who understand that patience, knowledge, and systematic searching can still lead to finding specimens worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes, proving that the age of treasure hunting is far from over and that the most valuable discoveries often come to those who combine scientific knowledge with persistent effort and unwavering dedication to their search objectives. So there you have it, the most incredible journey through American numismatic history, from the $130 million in 1998 D Washington quarter all the way to the record-breaking $279 million 1965 Washington quarter, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for collectors who possess the knowledge, patience, and determination to recognize their incredible worth and unlock fortunes that can literally change lives forever.